Hi everybody, my name's Andy and I am going to teach you about CSS Grid. And the way I'm going to do it is through a TV show, a pretty old TV show. So if you are not as old as I am, you might be wondering, what is the Brady Bunch? And it was a show from the 70s, and all of these GIFs here were taken from a YouTube video, and which I'm going to show in a second. And what we're going to do is to recreate part of this video with CSS Grid. So let me show you the video. I have it timestamped here. And look at that 70s hair. That is 70s hair. All these people. That is super 70s right here. Okay, let's check it out. All right, here's the animation coming up. Okay, let's pause it. That's basically what we're going to recreate with CSS Grid. And it's not going to be boring, and you're going to be able to follow along, and it's going to work. All right, let's do it. Okay, so I have a local server running and have this all the different GIFs here that are just in divs, and they're just stacked up, and we don't have a grid, but we're going to make one now. Here's the HTML. Pretty self-explanatory. We've got a div container which has a class grid, and we have these all these immediate children. We have all the which have classes that represent the names of the people in the Brady Bunch, as well as the title, which we're going to eventually kind of animate, scale up the way that it was scaled in the theme song. And so in our CSS here, we don't have a lot going on yet. I'll explain what this comment is in a second. But for now, let's start defining our grid. So we're going to say display grid on grid. Super exciting, doesn't do anything yet, that's okay. We are going to give a max width 700 pixels. And then what we're going to do is define our template. Now, there are various ways to create grids in with CSS Grid. You can do so implicitly or explicitly. I'm not going to get into the differences there in this video, but I'm going to say that what I'm about to show you is an explicit creation of a grid. And so I'm going to paste this comment here. I'm going to paste that right here. And I'm going to surround each eventual line of my grid with quotes. Okay. So once I hit save here, it's actually going to create a grid. It's going to look right, except we still have a little bit more work to do. So I'll explain what that work is. Okay, we hit save. Here's our grid. It's a little bit sloppy. First things first, let's eliminate those gaps between all the cells and kind of make them all uniform. So we're going to say our images within the grid, our block level. Hey, I said they're block. Make it work. Okay, block level. They have a max width of 100%, width of 100%, a height of 100%. Okay, and to create those gaps uniformly in all the grid cells, we are going to simply specify that in our parent. You'll notice that a lot of the work to be done with our grid happens at the parent level. It's similar to Flexbox in that way, where you say display flex, justify content, space around, whatever you're using. It's similar with grid. You're doing a lot of work in the parent, and then things kind of just work. So we are going to supply grid gap of 10 pixels. And hey, that looks pretty nice. If we look across here, it looks like it's kind of pretty similar. Obviously, we haven't done the animation yet, but that's not bad. So one thing is, say we wanted to swap Marcia in the upper left corner here with Bobby in the bottom right. So how would we do that? So changing these around isn't going to do anything. If I put Bobby where Marcia is and Marcia where Bobby is, it's not going to do anything because these names aren't referenced yet, so they don't really mean anything. All that our template knows is that there are 3 strings on each row, and so we're going to create a 3x3 grid. Our HTML happens to be in the right order for that to happen, for it to look correct, but it's not going to work if we want to start switching things around. So let's do that. And the way we do that is to associate our classes that I showed you before in the HTML with, I keep spelling GRD, and that's not going to help. And I'm going to now reference one of the names in our template areas with the class in our HTML. And so that doesn't do anything yet, but it will. So I'm not going to bore you by typing the other 8 entries out here. So I'm going to fast forward and just add them in. Okay. So now we have referenced all of the names in our template with all of our HTML classes. So those divs that are surrounding each of the grid cells. Now these mean something. So now if I take Bobby and I cut Bobby and put Marcia's name there, and I replace Marcia with Bobby and I hit save, now this is going to swap with this. So we're going to save, and boom, it just worked. And so that's really powerful. It's a really powerful technique that we can use to control our explicit grid here. It's very useful. And let's take this a step further. So this is fine, maybe when we have the enough screen width, but what if we, have a smaller screen? Why don't we adjust to that? So with our smaller screen, what we want this to look like is we'll have the title on the top, and we'll have the other items in the grid kind of go down the page. But we're going to have our columns only 2 columns wide instead of 3. So let's do that here. So I'm going to copy this, our grid template areas, and we're going to create a media query. So we're going to say media screen and max width 600 pixels. So once the screen is 600 pixels or smaller, we're going to do the following. So I'm copying that grid template area definition here, but we're going to make some changes to it. We're going to say we want title to occupy the top column, and then Marcia and Carol can go on the second column. I'm going to move Greg down here with Jan, and this title we already handled. I'm going to take Peter out, move him with Cindy, and then Mike and Bobby will occupy the bottom row here. So I'm going to hit save, and let's see if this works. Boom. So now we've got everyone on exactly where we specified them to be. And we can obviously change any of these around where we need to, and it's just going to work, which is really, really cool. So to complete the example, to kind of finish this off, let's get our animations working. So to do that, we want to work on the image that is within the title div right here, which is this one here, so on line 15. So I notice we haven't done anything to our HTML, which is really nice. We can control all these things with grid with just a little bit of setup, which is really a powerful thing. So I'm going to access the title image, and I'm going to say I want it to an animation that lasts 3 seconds long. It goes forwards. It doesn't start until after 1 second because we don't want it to happen right away. And finally, we'll provide a name. So we'll say scale up. Obviously, you can call that anything you want. And let's create our, I guess I could just do it right here. So keyframes, scale up. And we will just have this scale to, I don't know, 2.2. See how that looks. And okay, that obviously doesn't look good. But when we're in this view with our larger screen, that's not bad. We probably want it to start from a smaller size. So let's do that. We're just going to say, we'll give it an initial value here. So we'll say transform scale, and we can maybe start from 0.3, something like that. We could also start from 0. Maybe that looks better. Cool. And we also will need a second keyframe animation for mobile. So once we're in this small screen here, you'll notice that looks a little bit horrible. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to call it scale up, not scale up plus, scale up mobile. Yeah, I can type. And let's maybe put it to 0.8. And so now that we have that, I'm going to copy the name of that animation. I'm going to go down here and say that the title image should, we should have another animation that lasts 3 seconds, goes forwards, doesn't start till after a second, and it's scale up mobile. And voila, looks pretty good. We move it out here and the animation restarts. Yeah, I think we're ready to ship this thing. So hopefully this gave you a quick introduction to CSS Grid. And now there are multiple ways we could have built this. I chose to use grid template areas because I think it's really fun, and I like how you can just visually see how the grid's going to look. I think that's super powerful. Then we associated our classes with the names that we provided in our grid template. And after we did that, we can move these around arbitrarily, easily. And we have all the power in the world, which is excellent because power is hard to come by. All right, I hope that helped, and I will be back with another video soon. Thank you.